All right. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. Hello again, YouTube. Today, we're talking about, well, me, I guess. I'll be answering some questions. Between the fine people from the Part-Time YouTube Academy and my Instagram and my Twitter,
Hey, follow me.
I've got enough questions to maybe give you a better idea of who I am. My name is Markian, and I like to use this channel to explore ideas around positive psychology and self-actualization in particular. Welcome. First question comes from Becky, who wants to know where I'm from and how many languages I speak. So I live not far from New York City, about an hour north. My parents were also born in the US, so I'm second generation American, and each of them kept the culture that their parents passed down pretty strongly, which I'm glad for. And as a result, I know English. I hope I know English. And then I speak passable Ukrainian and Spanish. I did a year abroad in Seville, my freshman year of university, and it was a really good experience. It cemented my knowledge of Spanish, forced me to practice. A related question from Ganga is, do you speak Russian? No, is the short answer. There's some mutual intelligibility between Ukrainian and Russian, but I don't know Ukrainian as well as I might in order to be able to understand the connections to Russian. Listening to Russian's hard because it's like garbled. And here's a question from Radika. What would you most enjoy at a wedding event? And the reason I picked this out, and the reason I'm including it in this little section about language, is because the Ukrainian word for wedding is veselya. Now let's do a little grammar here. The word in Ukrainian for happy or joyous is vesely. And the astute listeners will recognize that there seems to be some connection between those two words in Ukrainian. Specifically, the noun form, veselya, is just a different suffix for the same root, and the literal way to translate it would be, what is a veselya? It's a happiness, it's a joy. And yeah, the reason I picked out this question is because I love weddings. I think they're a celebration of not just the union of people, but happiness in life more broadly. I think they're beautiful things. But to answer the question itself, I don't know, probably the same thing most people enjoy at a wedding. Open bar and dancing and spending time and enjoying yourself with people you love. Which brings us to the next question, and this section we'll call lifestyle questions. Matthew Lamotte asks, how do you most like to spend your time? And I wear a lot of hats. I tutor, I work at a psychology office, I am a student, I have plenty of hobbies to keep me busy. The short answer, without getting into the weeds, is I like to spend my time in ways that make me feel good about being tired at the end of the day and collapsing into bed for a heavy rest. Yeah, I like feeling fulfilled at the end of the day. That answer feels like a bit of a dodge. Some of my hobbies are cooking, are making things. I enjoy the process of making something with my hands. It's very rewarding for me. I journal when I have the time, when I remember. Mahak asks, since you journal in a physical book, what is your favorite stationery? Now, my knee-jerk response is that I like the bare necessities, so I am not fussy. I'm an advocate of using whatever's available to get the job done. But the question is, what is your favorite stationery? So I don't know paper types too well, but like a thick, heavy piece of paper that feels like it's gonna last appeals to me. Keegan asks, how do you like living in New York? Yeah, it's all right. What I like to say about the area I grew up in, live in still, is that the same reason our parents came here to raise kids is the exact reason everyone who grows up here wants to leave. It's peaceable and calm and pleasant, which is good and fine, but doesn't teach you a lot about the world, which is important to me, and I would go so far as to say important to everyone, even if they don't recognize that or term it in that same way. A friend of mine, Connor, asks, "How are you?" This question, I think, didn't actually think that I was making a video with the prompts I was given, but that's fine. I'm gonna take it and run with it. I'm doing well. If anything, the recent stages of the pandemic I feel like I've just grown better and better at making my time in solitude useful. So, yeah, I'm well. I feel fulfilled, broadly speaking. And then Jeremy asks, what is your favorite Necron unit, and are you a licensed vibrotherapist? Sounds spicy, but it isn't. The second one. I'll give context to both. So the first one, what is my favorite Necron unit? I mentioned I have plenty of hobbies. One of them is miniature painting. Something about highly detailed handiwork has always appealed to me, and that changes forms depending on what context I'm in and what tools I have available to me, but to list a couple of related examples that I think scratch the same itch for me. There is the Ukrainian art of making pisanki, painted eggs, in a beautiful, detailed way. When I was studying abroad in Spain, I was very struck by, and I didn't have the time to, but I wanted to learn how to make damasenos. They're this Toledan, that is from Toledo, tradition of, usually on a metal plate, you take gold leaf and filigree and do these beautiful, intricate patterns hammered onto and melted onto the metal surface that results in this really beautiful, highly detailed, I don't know, art piece, yeah. And then, yeah, by the same stroke, Baroque architecture has always been super appealing to me. I think attention to detail is a beautiful thing, and I think, well, this is a tangent, but I think that nature operates in a similar way, where if you look closely at any part of the scene, there is what feels like infinite beauty. You can zoom in forever and still find something interesting. So, okay, are you a licensed vibrotherapist? I reposted the image that is now on the screen and asked, this was a story post some time ago, who wants to line up for some vibrotherapy here, bringing it back. But prior to shooting this, I Googled that image and that term, and I couldn't find any, call it reliable looking resources that suggested that people actually did this. There is a lot of wacky stuff from the history of mental health. Tree panning, for example, to, just one of many. But I don't know that clanging a metal pot around someone's head like one might in a cartoon actually ever took off. Maybe I'm wrong. If you have a resource, post it in the comments by all means. Thank you for those, Jeremy. Maybe I'll be a vibrotherapist yet. And that leads us to the topic of psychology. Here are some questions. First, favorite and most despised psychologist. This question and the next are both from Luli. Favorite and most despised psychologist. Favorite psychologist is easier. I would have to say Carl Jung, because when Jung was participating in the field, it was still, the rules hadn't yet been written as firmly as they are now. Freud was still developing his theories, and there was a lot of disagreement and faction splitting in Vienna, where a lot of this was taking place. And yeah, I really liked the way Jung tackled that uncertain period. He really, I think, tried to look at the mind from novel angles. He would attend seances and draw mandalas and do all sorts of esoteric practices that were meant to help him introspect in different ways and to examine the contents of the mind through a symbolic lens, which I think is probably the closest approximation you can get to understanding the internal workings. There's so much that gets lost between the inner experience of your mind and even what you can express in words. So I think that symbols are, well, maybe not a better alternative, because words are symbolic themselves, are a different vector for approaching self-examination. I think there's a lot of value there. He also wrote the Red Book, which is sort of like a Bible, in the sense that it tries to contain all the general truths of the world and existence as a human, but created using the contents of Jung's own mind. It's like an exercise in what do I believe and what do I know to be true, and trying to flesh out in its entirety a complete work of your self-exploration. I haven't finished reading it. It's dense and not super helpful as far as learning how to be a clinician, but I think it's the sort of thing that is enormously valuable to the person who does it. That is, I think Jung probably got a really good idea of the way his mind works and feels from writing that book. Yeah, okay. Most despised therapist. That one's harder. I am of the mind that there are as many ways to practice therapy as there are psychologists or clinicians of any sort. And as such, everybody contributes something unique, and as long as they're helping people, they are contributing something positive. But I guess I have the most beef with... I won't say a single psychologist, mostly because I don't know these theorists' names, but brief therapy, broadly speaking, is, I think, shallower than other approaches. There really is something to the connection between either two people, in the case of individual therapy, or long-term group therapy, where a collective is coming together and new things are happening over time. But I think that extremely time-limited approaches for growth psychology, for an individual trying to better themselves in the world, it gives the individual short shrift. Yeah, that's a hill I'll die on. Come at me. Here's another from Luli. Is despising people psychologically healthy? Yeah, I'm inclined to say it can be fine. Narratively speaking, it can be helpful to have an enemy if that's someone who works in opposition to you, and part of sorting yourself out involves overcoming them and the obstacles they put down. But it's ultimately it's a matter of extent. If you get super worked up about this person, of course it can harm you. If it does more harm than good, it's not healthy. The question at the core of it is, can you despise in a way that doesn't make you less? And then from JL, What's something that seems bad on the outside but is actually functional, or vice versa? Okay. Something that seems bad on the outside but is actually functional is, oh, there's so much. Literally any part of one's shadow, and let's tag back to Jung real quick. The shadow is part of his archetypal system for organizing the psyche, which refers to the part of self that we push away or don't accept because of the nature of the thoughts and feelings that arise in that part of self. Put it another way, the shadow is all the stuff involving dark thoughts or ideas that make you feel uncomfortable and make you think to yourself, oh, like, did I just think that? No, that I shouldn't be that way. That's not me. That's no good. So the reason I mention that is because there's plenty of stuff in everyone's shadow that if it's pushed away too hard, and it is a part of you, you have to recognize, if you're pushing away a part of you very hard, it's going to pop up in ways you can't control. The trick to it is to plug those thoughts and feelings and ideas into the right places. That goes a long way to making you a better person. This is a good question. This will be definitely a video for another time. Good questions all around. I hope this helped provide some insight into the way I see things. Like the rest of us, I'm still figuring it out myself. And if you like this video, you'll probably, there's a chance, I bet, we'll see, but you might like some of my other stuff. So, check it out, and stay tuned for the next one.